If not, I hope you're at least okay. Today is a Tuesday, and I'm losing my marbles. I mean, there are no marbles, honestly. I'm just already gone, but that's okay. Ha! But anyways, I have a couple of things on the roster that I want to get done. Particularly, hi Oliver. Wow. You're fine. Particularly with like some history stuff. Just a little bit of history stuff. Which I'm like actually really excited about. And what else are we gonna do? I think I think I also I don't know. I'm just kind of like, okay. Oliver. He's being so needy today. Do you see him? Here's his nose. Can you see his nose? Here's his nose. Very tippy top. You can see it just a little bit. Also, the fish tank looks horrible. Pretend it doesn't look that bad. I don't know. Oh my gosh, my neighbors are outside yelling at each other again because that's what they do. Can you not, Ollie? Yeah, I know. Andrew left for a meeting real quick. He'll be back. He will. He will. My gosh, my neighbor just yells all the time. He has the audacity to say that we're noisy. They yell constantly. Whatever. It's okay. It's okay. It's really not. I'm just bitter. I'm kidding. It really isn't that big a video. I'm just kind of sassy sometimes. Man, I got all of my perfumes picked out for the next couple weeks, which is exciting. Today, I'm wearing a really good one, and I'm just like, this is just so good. I can't help it. But yeah, we have a lot of good conversations today. I'm really excited. And, well, I mean, if you guys just don't say anything, then I'll just be like, I'll just be like, er. But, we've had days like that. We have. We've had days where I just sit here and I'm just like, a blah, 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 and you guys are like, anyways, I'm not going to dive really deep into that. Let's see. George is here. Hello, George. How are you? Cold is here. Whoa, he's returned. I'm surprised. Hello, sir. I thought you left me forever. Forever and ever. Forever, ever, ever. I know you didn't. I'm just being sassy. Sit that here. Actually, I'm going to sit right here. I'm trying to move things out of the way. I have a couple. Oh, it's raining outside. Is that why you're talking to me? I'm only good to chat with when it's raining. Yes, so. No, I'm kidding. I'm being sassy. I have a couple. Oh, you can be here today. Hey. Once winter comes along, you'll be here a lot more. And I'll be like, hi. Hi. Oh, man. Oh, shoot. That's why it feels so weird. My cover is like almost done. Should I leave it like this? Is it better like this? It feels so naked though. I'm just like, it's not that great, but yeah. This is like a really old jacket that I have to replace the zipper on because it's really gross. Hi, Chaotic. I'm surprised you're here today. That's okay. Oh man, everyone's here today. Well, if you guys are close as winter and you'll be wanting me to leave. Whatever. So you say. Contrary to popular belief, I do like sass. And I do like it when you guys are a bit argumentative. Give me a little bit of pushback. It makes me feel a lot more like satisfied with the work I'm doing. I'm not wearing my necklace. It's naked. My chest is naked. Oh, whatever will I do? I'm not naked though. Anyways, sorry, I'm just really weird today. Everything's been freaking crazy. I don't know. Just today, Josie? What do you mean? Oh, rude. Oh, we could probably make you cry if we tried. Good luck with that. It takes a lot to make me cry. I'm Sensi. You'd have to, like, show me something that I actually care about. And, well, not just that. It's like, when I'm doing stuff in front of people, I'm just like, oh, yeah, you're not going to get a reaction out of me. Because a lot of people do things just to get a reaction out of you. And they'll say things and they'll be like, blah, blah. I've had so many, not so many, but I've had a lot of people in my life like that. So I'm like, I'm not immune, but yeah. When are you not weird? Good question. Good question. But today's a really interesting topic. I'm really excited. I'm gonna see how many hours of content. I usually have like 5, 6 hours of content lined up, and I have to pick up like usually an hour to an hour and a half of it for stream. I think we have 4 videos max we can watch, which would be okay. We're a bunch of weird folks, but not weirdos. What's the difference? I want to know. I really do. But we don't. Oh, weirdos are creepy. But I feel like that's just what you say creepy, right? Like you're just like, oh, you're just creepy. And be like, yeah. Or will we? Wow, cold. Okay, sir. You have fun with that, I guess. Let's see. I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. Oh man. But how are you guys? How is like the past like couple of days? You know your chat, Josie, or do I? I know some of you guys are kind of like antagonistic. I've won some people over. I've won some of you over. I have. Man, I'm so excited for tomorrow. I'm gonna dive into why. But I'll be cool. Cool as hell. I have to grab soil. Most of my plants are good, actually. Chaotic says my day has been okay. I've studied a bit today. I'm gonna have a big test next Monday. Hell yeah. What's tomorrow? Cooking stream. I've decided to make cooking stream part of like the week as a whole, which is sad because I really like cooking food for all of you guys, but then you guys kind of stopped giving me recipes, and the recipes I have been getting haven't necessarily been hard. It's just they're very similar to what I've made before, and it's harder for me to find people to give it to. Because they're just like, Josie, you keep giving me food. And I'm like, yeah. And then sometimes people are really good with it, but sometimes people aren't. So I'm just going to give them desserts instead. But yeah, so this week's cooking stream is going to line up with the theme of the week. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And I feel like it'll be fun. It'll be more of a challenge than me just being like, oh, let me just put the food together and then make blah. Because it's just, eh. But yeah. Cadix says, how's your day? It was pretty good. It was pretty good. I had a decent time. I've just been like chilling. Chilling. I worked. I got plants. Wait. I got a new one today. It's a red philodendron, which has some variegation in it, I think. Maybe? Yeah. So it's like a pink philodendron. I'm gonna put it in soil. And it's gonna grow, baby, grow. We'll see what happens. I just get lots of plants all the time. I have 3 plants I want to pot up while we're chatting today. And then I have a small pot, a big pot, and then I feel like this one could go in this pot. Caddick says chilling is nice unless by using marijuana that's bad for your memory. Why are you bringing that up? I don't know. I don't really smoke. I did stop smoking because of memory stuff. I just kind of stopped because I don't know. I was kind of bored of it. It wasn't really like helping me, and it just made me like it didn't really make me anything like different per se. I was just tired. Why pot them? Just plant them. Because they're inside plants. That's why. That's why. I don't know. A lot of people say that like weed is bad for your memory, but I never really struggled with that. It actually like just calmed me down more. So I like because I have ADHD and PTSD, so I used it as like a way to cope with my PTSD because the well, not the meds that I was on, the antidepressants that I was on for a bit made me blind. Like they started making my vision go away. So it's not that I had adverse effects with it because I was on it like really well for a while, but then I went to the eye doctor and they were like, "Oh, this is like a side effect for your medication. You need to stop taking it and like start weaning off of it." And then I did, and then my vision was like back to normal for the most part. I still technically am supposed to wear glasses, but I don't. But yeah, weed was really helpful, especially when I was going through, I was working on stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like for some people it's bad, but it's like, it's all how you use it. And I didn't really smoke like straight like weed. I had like I don't know. I wasn't really invested in like being like, oh, I want to be high. I just didn't really like that aspect of it. I don't like feeling intoxicated, and I never really have. So I don't know. Sorry. You were a Snoop Dogg. Yeah, like I consumed like CBD basically. And I would have like the purest form possible, so I didn't want to like consume the green version of it because it's not good for you to have like combustibles. So I like basically got the most pure kind of weed that I could because it's better on your lungs. But even then I was uncomfortable because like my my grandfather died of lung cancer. And it was good for like when I used it, but yeah. To each their own, you know? Not everyone like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like y'all get like a lot of people they'll be like, "Oh, I thought you smoked like a lot of weed all the time. I thought you did that." But I was like never really like into like traditional weed like that or anything like that. I literally would get like concentrates, but like CBD concentrates, which are kind of weird. Oh, do you see it? You can't see the stuff, but he's being really weird. Let me show you. What are you doing, bub? Chaotic says, I never tried weed before. I don't know how to get it, and I'd be scared as hell for cops to find me and beat the shit out of me for using it. Here in America, it's not really that bad. I don't know. Yeah, but he's been following me all day. Having to Ollie. He's like, hi. He's so cute. Is it? I don't know. I wouldn't recommend, like, I don't know. I think it's everyone's own decision what they do with their bodies. So, yeah. He is such a good boy. His ear looks kind of wet because we had to get, like, an ointment for it. Everyone's costing so much money, yeah. All of the pets have been really expensive the past couple weeks, and I'm like, oh, a couple grand in the hole. Boop. That's kind of to be expected. Oh yeah, it's legal in my state. Yeah. Aren't you in Maryland? Oh man, there's been lots of crazy stuff going on. Cold says we stores on every corner up here. Yeah. It's a vibe. For me personally, I don't really even drink, like, often, if at all, either. So I'm just kind of like, eh. I don't know, I'm just so boring, guys. George says, yep. More than 7-Eleven. Bruh, it's because you're in Canada. You guys are like, marijuana everything. Oh my god, really? You have, I want to get this in so bad. Maybe I just need to root it in for a bit. This guy. I think I just need to root him in water. And then after a while, I can just, like... It's in a little cylinder. He's cute. Hopefully he, doesn't rot or anything. I really need to clean it out, but swapping plants. Canada is like, yeah, drugs. Not. I feel like Canada doesn't, like, not with most stuff, you know? Okay, I'm just gonna plant this ivy instead. Is Canada like that, in your opinion, cold? I would say Europe's more like that, IMO. Oh my god. Everything I'm planting is just, like, falling out. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna be very careful with this guy. Just for a little bit. It's all done. It's all done its thing, and we'll be good. Caddick says not even the Netherlands is all about drugs. Weed is not even totally legal there, although it's pretty normalized. Yeah, didn't they say you can't have it, I don't know, in certain parts? But anyways, do you, like, I feel like, how many of you guys are in my, I don't think some of you guys are in my Discord, but I do post about, like, links, you know, to different things that are happening, like press briefings and stuff. And the one that I was watching before stream, oh my god, it was, like, crazy. I was watching two of them. Candic, you are? Yeah, okay. Cold says, yeah, it seems to be getting worse. Yeah, it seems like everybody smokes weed now. For me, I could always, like, stop it when I wanted to. And, like, I smoked it quite a bit when I was quitting nicotine, especially. So, like, 2 summers ago, I was, like, consuming a ton of CBD. Like, primarily CBD over, like, actual weed. And I did try smoking actual weed. Like, I was experimenting with myself. Not a lot, just, like, a little bit to see how well I do with it. But now I don't even, like, I don't really have the desire to really do it anymore. It's never been something that I was like, oh, I'm going to quit, but then I can't quit. And then, like, you know, I was just like, I will one day. How come we can't read the news channel? What do you mean? You can't read it? Is that the reason? Because I reference it all the time. Let's see. Let me go to settings. Permissions. View channel. Yes. Maybe I should join Discord. Is there a lot of stuff on it? I just kind of send links and all that sort of thing. You should be able to see it. Yeah. I'm syncing the permissions. See if that, like, makes it better. I tried... I can't read or write in it. Must be a permissions thing. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, I updated it. Maybe it's better. What are your permissions, Cole? Yeah, you should be able to. I don't know. Caddick says, I tried smoking cigarettes, but I didn't like it. Not my cup of tea. Yeah, I primarily, like, I don't know. I didn't really like, I grew up around a lot of it, and I wasn't really like even peer pressured into it. I just wanted to try it, and I just kind of kept doing it because I was really stressed out all the time. And because I was literally like living, I was practically like homeless and stuff. So I was just kind of like, might as well vape, who cares? And then I quit for a little bit and I went back on it. My ex did it all the time, and that's pretty much why I was on it. And then when I wasn't like around, like when I broke up with him, I started like slowly weaning off of it. So I haven't had any nicotine for since I started streaming here. So it's been like 2 years, 2.5 years now. George says, I can't stand the smell of cigarettes, never tried them. Yeah, it's not like, I don't know. I'm not like one of those people that's like, oh, if you consume it, you're like a horrible person or whatever. Because, like, that'd be like super hypocritical. But I'm also not like, oh, you should try it and see how it is, you know? It really is just like one of those things that you kind of learn about. If you try it, you try it. If you don't, you don't. Look at the kitty sleeping there. He's so cute. I know, I know. Well, I'm so like fucking boring, guys, and like almost straight edge. Did you get his meds, beef? What is it?
Meropitant.
Is there one or two?
There's 2 different medications. They just put them in the same bag.
Okay, that makes sense. What's some with this? Anyways, Andrew got our cat some meds.
Yeah. And super late.
I told you better. Honestly, we've had a really good streak with all the pets. Like, they haven't gotten sick that often. The past couple of years. Andrew the greatest. Yeah, he's pretty chill. He got a promotion. So he's stoked. And I'm really proud of him. Are we gonna... Do you want to go out to eat for your promotion, Andrew? Do you want to go out to eat to celebrate your promotion? Later. Chaotic says congrats. I'm proud of him. He's been working there for a bit.
Do one thing at a time.
Okay. So, what do we want to talk about? Right, we were talking about like all the history and all that good stuff. Oh my gosh. Nip, 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 nip. Let's see. Do you want to... Actually, yeah, that's probably going to be best. I've talked a lot about like media history and stuff like that before, but how much of that do you guys actually recall? Like, for example, okay, background, context. I grew up in a media empire. Like, my family, my grandfather, who like I had to live with and help take care of and that sort of thing and help him like with the business or whatever, was in charge of printing media for people. And it was a lot of like propaganda, but coincidentally, I was around a lot of journalists growing up, and my entire life was like parsing through historic media, helping, being with him while he was doing interviews, shadowing interviews, and even giving interviews of my own for the outlet that he was like working with. So like different places like with the Adventist church, so like Advent Source. I don't know. I've been publicized in a couple of different things. And is it really fancy stuff? No, it's all church related, so I don't reference it a lot because I'm not super proud of it. But I've done a lot of that stuff. So for me, I'm pretty well acquainted with like the history of media and why it is the way it is. But are you guys really familiar with a lot of the history? Because I have a good story that I was able to find on YouTube that kind of breaks down like why media became more, why it's been less privatized and why the government started like having more like a push for some unions to be more involved, or for there to be public funding for like PBS and that sort of thing. But yeah, have I talked a lot? I've talked about that like a little bit with you guys, but I haven't really talked about it a lot. Chaotic says, I'm not gonna lie, I know nothing about media history, you're just a dumb dude. Uh-huh. Well, if you say so. But yeah, do you guys want to learn about it? It doesn't matter, I'm still gonna talk about it anyways. uh, Alright, I'm ready. Sure thing, learning is good. Yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things. Oh my god. Let's see. Let's see. George says, "Hey, I remember when there was only three TV stations and the news was on at 6 every night." Yeah, we've talked about this like a little bit, but like the news being a thing like online, or not even online, but like on TV is still rather new. Like every time we have a new form of media consumption that is available, it kind of like sets a new standard for people to follow through with things. Let's see. Wonder why. Okay. Caddick says, are we going to find out about how the bourgeoisie class controls the media? No, not really. It's just about the first media empire. Rich people controlling the media has been, I don't know. It's not necessarily what you think it is, because there's lots of government regulations that dictate whether or not you can say certain things, especially if you get public funding. But it is a bit different nowadays, especially with the age of Trump. Because we've talked about it before with how Trump has been suing a lot of different media organizations because they're saying things that he doesn't like about him specifically. Think about like how Paramount is trying to do a deal, and that's why they got rid of their night show hosts. They say that they're trying to like save money, but basically it's just them trying to sweeten the pot. So there's plenty of different layers that go into it. But for the most part, media empires are like a really, really old thing. It's been first it was like a state run thing. So like they would have like a town squire that would go to the middle of the city and it would say like, hey, this is all the stuff that's going on. Or you would have a church organization with like a religious leader that would tell people what was going on. And then it became the government that told people what was happening. They'd be like, this is happening here. Or you would hear it via word of mouth from like random travelers and stuff like that. So with the printing press, people would start making little like pamphlets and stuff like that where they would give that information to people. But then it just kind of like keeps going and going. Chaotic says Trump took away the passport of the most important senator in Brazil because he criticized Trump. Yeah, Trump has taken away a lot of things from people. It's honestly pretty fucking wild. It stresses me out, man. But yeah, it's not a new thing that he's doing. It's honestly like pretty old. He's not original with it. But we're going to talk a little bit about Trump in a bit too. Just saying. Okay, here we go. We're not going to dive that far back into things because I feel like it's not insanely relevant. But I thought this was good.
1895. William Randolph Hearst arrived with
Let me
some
turn it up a
grand
little bit.
ambitions. He just conquered San Francisco's newspaper industry and intended to do the same here. But New York was no San Francisco. It was the most competitive market Hearst could have possibly decided to enter, but he knew that. Hearst begged his mom to give him the money to buy a small paper called the Morning Journal. His mother, who controlled the vast fortunes of his late mining magnate father, was willing to give her son a chance. But the price was steep, the modern equivalent of around $5 million today. And those who were aware of Hearst's purchase at the time dismissed it as really, really stupid. The journal wasn't a prestigious paper. In a city with countless rags, each perfectly crafted to cater to every demographic, buying the journal seemed like a bad move. Hearst had overpaid just to get a chance to enter the city. Sure, he had found success in San Francisco, but that was in large part because he adopted the sensationalism popularized by Joseph Pulitzer. Out west, those tactics were exciting, a new wave that Hearst rode in on. But in New York, the top of the food chain was, well, Pulitzer. Hearst's strategy here would just be to copy him in his own city. As far as most were concerned, Hearst was a spoiled rich kid from out west, whose only claim to fame was using his family's wealth to buy up talent and brute force his way to success. And I mean, they weren't wrong. He would just find the best journalists, the best writers, and pay them more than their current employers. Sure, he wasn't actually making money doing
another
this,
video
but he
about
could grow
him,
his circulation,
but it's not super relevant.
and that's all he really
You'll
cared
kind of get
about.
the gist of
but
them
that
in this
same
one.
strategy could never work here, right? And, yeah, he just did the same thing. And it worked. Not only did Hearst copy Pulitzer's style, he just stole his employees away too. It sounds slimy, and it was, but hey, Pulitzer's journalists weren't fans of their boss, and Hearst offered them a lot more money. Pulitzer was old, and going blind, or deaf, and he was just a pain to work with, kind of a jerk. Hearst, on the other hand, was good-natured, jovial, and he treated his writers well. People just wanted to work for him. Now, this isn't to say Hearst just threw money to build a successful paper. He put in the work. If an interview needed to be done and nobody was around, he'd get on a bike, find that person, and interview them himself. He was obsessed with perfection. In one area he felt that he could really improve on were the comics. Comics were more than just the funny pages back in the late 1800s. I mean, they still were the funny pages, but they were actually really important to a paper's success. You gotta think, in immigrant-rich New York, a big part of this market probably can't speak English well. Comics were just funny pictures. They didn't require extensive reading. And there was one character in particular
Victorian
that
era,
defined Pulitzer's
baby.
comic section. The Yellow Kid. The Yellow Kid was just a bald kid. A bald kid wearing a big yellow shirt. Hey, wait a second. A lot of kids were bald in the city because of lice. So this bald kid was from the lower
That is
class.
true.
The immigrants. The poor. Hearst wanted his own Yellow Kid, so he just bought the cartoonist who made the comics. Pulitzer hired someone else to make new Yellow Kid comics. So now two papers had completely unrelated comics, both with Yellow Kid. And that's where the term yellow journalism came from. These two papers in New York City had the same Yellow Kid and the same style of journalism, sensationalism. Now, neither Pulitzer nor Hearst created
I do want to mention that William Randolph Hearst was basically like his parents were fucking millionaires, today's equivalent of like almost billionaires. They had a ton of fucking money, and through that he was able to leverage their money that they had and just kind of like buy up media empires. This is when like journalism started becoming more popular, blah 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 blah. But yeah, you don't really need to know a ton about this. This is basically like the late 1880s, after the big recession that happened in New York City, which is why it was easy for him to like swoop up a lot of the media that was happening there. But anyways, that's a whole different conversation. So I don't think the first video
but they
talks
did
about that,
popularize
so
a very
I
specific
was like, we'll
way
just
of
hop
getting
into
people's
this one.
attention. Papers had always been biased in the past, while also informing people of the news. But in yellow journalism, the news was almost entirely irrelevant. Anything could be news. Yellow journalism was shocking headlines, colorful pictures, and broad appeal topics. Both papers focused on the fight between the underdog and the upper class. This was the Gilded Age. Everything was controlled by the trusts
privileged.
and monopolies. Political machines like Tammany Hall just ran the city. There was a lot of corruption to expose, but that didn't mean the newspapers weren't shady themselves, because oh boy were they.
He was
a price war
born,
erupted between the two papers.
like, right
Hearst
as
dropped the
slavery was
price of his
ending.
paper from 2 pennies to 1. Now selling every paper at a loss.
I don't think so.
Pulitzer was now forced to match Hearst's price drop, or lose a decent chunk of his audience. The funny thing was, Hearst's paper wasn't nearly as popular as Pulitzer.
His family was involved in mining, and he was born and raised in San Francisco, and yeah, he was very, very, very famous. Very, very popular for lots of reasons. There was a movie that was based off of him. Oh, shoot. Be based off of William Hearst. Citizen Kane, which you guys have probably heard of. It's interesting.
Which meant he didn't need to produce as many papers. Pulitzer was losing more money per day than Hearst was. Over time, this strategy paid off. The journal was starting to catch up to the world in circulation. Now, not really related, but Hearst had a thing for chorus girls, and one girl caught his eye, Millicent Wilson. There was quite an age gap here. Will was in his 30s, and Millicent was 16. Christ. Millicent's mother wasn't too convinced that Hearst was the right man.
You may have also heard of Mr. Hearst because of the Hearst Castle that's in California. It's kind of like south of San Francisco and north of LA and more like the middle region. No spoilers, but...
And for her daughter, so she only allowed the two to date if Millicent's older sister was allowed to accompany them. So Hearst had 2 girls with him, traveling across the globe on vacations and adventures, and that gave him something of a playboy image. Playboy image with a underage girl. God. Anyway, back on track. Around this time, a new story was starting to develop that Hearst was just captivated by. War. There was a rebellion in Cuba. The Cuban rebels wanted Spain out, and this was the perfect opportunity for Hearst to make money. Paint a picture of those underdog Cuban freedom fighters facing off against the evil Spanish Empire. It had all the elements of a good story. The public was soon outraged at the atrocities going on. They even demanded government intervention. Hearst even found an 18-year-old rebel girl and got his journalist to break her out of jail, brought her back to New York, and turned her into a public sensation. She even got a parade. And then the Maine exploded. The USS Maine wasn't by Cuba for any military action, but it did just happen to explode anyway. Seems like a pretty clear case of Spain directly attacking the United States, at least how Hearst saw it. The official investigation ruled Maine an accident, and even today the best explanation is that Spain had nothing to do with it. But at the time, Hearst wasn't having it. He wanted action. Yeah. He wanted a story. And he told the public to demand revenge. Go to President McKinley to send in the troops,
media.
Teach the Spanish a lesson. And so they did. Or that's how the story is usually told. This was probably Hearst's most infamous moment. The guy that supposedly started the Spanish-American War. Sensationalism gone too far. Yellow journalism sparking, well, all of this. The funny thing is, this whole myth that Hearst actually started the war came from Hearst himself. Yeah, he loved the idea of people believing that he started the war. That he had that kind of influence? Wow. But he didn't, and he probably knew it. Hearst wasn't the only paper talking about Cuba. Like, everyone was. For years. All sensationalizing it. But Hearst just couldn't help but constantly remind people that he and he alone caused the US to act. A fact that probably isn't
true. I watched a video on the Hearst Castle
at all.
In
the U.S. wasn't going to just stand by and let potentially easy victory slip away. Even though the war wasn't as easy as it probably should have been, but that's a different story. Hearst treated the war like a vacation. Even while one of his journalists got injured in a battle. He presented his paper journal like an equal. with the military. Not only had they started the war, but the journal was capturing war criminals, fighting battles, documenting everything, all exaggerated of course. And being the humble man that he is, Hearst just couldn't help but start up another rivalry. The war brought attention to Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders. While the public was just learning of Teddy, Hearst was already well acquainted for many years. They both came from rich families, attended the same college, and generally held the same political views. Hearst knew Teddy Roosevelt, and he absolutely hated him. The war did not last long, but its effect on Hearst were permanent. Over the course of this whole conflict, the journal finally surpassed the world. Now Hearst was the undisputed king of New York papers. One might even say the king of journalism itself. Still, he wasn't content. Now that he had won New York, he started to focus on bigger things, like politics. Having control of this massive paper could give him a lot of leverage in any election. And Hearst was a guy who seemed to want it all. But he hit a bit of a roadblock. The damn newsies. Yeah, those kids on the street, usually homeless orphans, the ones that pass out the papers. Those kids kept Hearst's empire afloat. If people weren't getting papers, well then, Hearst just wasn't making money.
They ran everything.
So here's how it all worked. A newsie would buy a stack of papers from Hearst, then sell as many papers as he could. If the newsies didn't sell all of them in time, tough luck kid, have to eat the cost. During the war, the cost of running these papers increased, as you would expect. So to offset this, Hearst and Pulitzer put some of these costs on the newsies, charging them more to buy up the papers. Everyone wanted a paper, so the newsies were never left with unsold stock. But after the war, well, you can guess. With less demand, the papers decreased their prices for the newsies, except for Hearst and Pulitzer. Their prices stayed the same. The newsies weren't too happy about this, so they went on strike.
What the fuck?
This was bad PR,
Pay me better.
like a big business fighting against orphans.
Valid.
Not a good look, especially for two men who had made their image as fighting for the underdog.
You should also
Hearst
watch
and
the
Pulitzer's
musical
own
Newsies.
audiences were now going after them, so they had to
It's
back down.
relevant-ish.
After this whole experience, Pulitzer somehow
I'm sorry,
realized
musical
what he had
theater, y'all. I
became.
can't help
like
it.
to beat Hearst, he had become the villain. Feeling remorse or concerned about his legacy, he distanced himself from the paper, focusing on philanthropy and charity. Hearst did not care at all. What a
He
man.
really didn't.
Absolutely unfazed. He even used it as a springboard to get into politics. Sure, some didn't like
He was
him
like,
anymore,
"Fuck
but the
them."
paper was still popular. Hearst managed to get himself elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1902. Still though, he had much grander ambitions. Like mayor, he decided he needed to appear as a proper family man for the voters. So he decided to make Millicent his wife. One might say marrying a young chorus girl probably wasn't the best move for his image. He also changed his appearance. He had always come across as looking young for his age. He wanted to give some
Who
sense that
wouldn't,
he had
though? I
matured.
wanna look up.
Wanted people to take him seriously. So he decided to dress, seriously. Like a cartoonish interpretation of what dressing seriously would look like. All in black, black hat, black
really
jacket.
did, though.
Guess he thought he looked cool. People called him the
Just watch
Undertaker.
Citizen
His
Kane,
platform
yo.
was put all those ideas he had fought for in his papers into
He's like,
practice.
I wanna look
8-hour
like the
workdays,
Reaper.
ending monopolies, and going after the rampant corruption.
It's
He
like,
picked
kill
a fight
people
with
with
some
my
powerful
policies.
people, and he lost. He lost terribly. You just can't beat Tammany Hall. Hearst seemed to believe that he had enough influence to expose all the corruption and clean it out. He never stood a chance. Tammany Hall just took the votes that Hearst received and literally threw them in the river. Then said, "We win." I love democracy. This didn't end Hearst's political ambitions though. No, it strengthened them. If he couldn't become mayor of New York, well, he'd just have to become president of the United States. He was buying papers in LA, Boston, 2 in Chicago alone. He needed more
He was
national
fucking
influence,
crazy.
but it was too little too late. He lost the Democratic nomination to Alton Parker, who then would go on to lose to Hearst's personal rival, Teddy Roosevelt. He then unsuccessfully tried to run for mayor again in 1905, and then governor. None worked. Why did he just never get elected? Well, the problem was, he had a past. His newspapers had written a lot of things over the years, and he made a lot of enemies. Like a lot of enemies. It was all catching up with him. Also, apparently, he was accused of influencing the assassination of a president. Years before, this article in one of Hearst's papers suggested that someone should just kill McKinley. and nobody really cared about it until somebody actually did. Oops, some suspected Hearst had influenced the assassin in some
It's
way.
funny.
Now, this wasn't true. The assassin never heard of Hearst's paper in his life, but the whole controversy brought eyes on his past. He was seen as a bit of a troublemaker, someone who'd stir up problems for a story, and worst of all, maybe an anarchist. Hearst's political career came to a swift end. There was just too much baggage, and while he'd keep trying, he'd never win an election. After this, he decided to expand his reach in another way. If he couldn't be president, well, he'd at least try to be as influential as the president. Hearst was really interested in new technology, moving pictures, the radio. He bought magazines, theaters. The Hearst newspaper empire soon became the Hearst media empire, the very first media empire. World War I began, and Hearst was in a position to once again profit. His journalists covered from the front lines, and those stories were turned into newsreels, shown in theaters. Hearst had created corporate synergy. For the first time ever, Hearst newspaper, the center of his empire, was actually making a profit. Yet before this point, his mother was paying the bills to keep the business afloat, which is just hilarious. While she had considered giving him a substantial stake to his late father's fortune, her lawyers advised against it. They just didn't trust him with the money. Still, Hearst was building something to call his own. He realized that if you controlled multiple mediums, it could become something greater. Say there was a story written in his newspaper. That could spawn a radio drama, and that radio drama could be reimagined as a movie, and his newspapers could give it positive reviews. Sound familiar? It set a bit of a precedent. Now, while all this was going on, in his pastime, old Hearst was still mostly going to see those chorus girls. Of course he was. This time meeting up with an 18-year-old Marion Davies. Hearst was 52. Hearst had a plan for Davies. He wanted to turn her into a movie star. And so their affair began. Hearst wasn't very good at hiding it. Marion's face would be plastered over every Hearst newspaper and magazine. There was constant promotion for her next big movie, and his wife caught on pretty quickly. She didn't want a divorce. She was already entrenched in upper-class society and didn't want to give all that up, but their relationship unofficially ended there. His mom died of the Spanish flu in 1919. Hearst would consider this one of the worst events in his life, and he would never really recover mentally from this. But at least at the age of 56, he finally inherited the family fortune all for himself. Yes, even by his 50s, he was still given an allowance from his mother. They just didn't trust him with the money. And they were right. Hearst went on a spending spree, buying all sorts of useless treasure from Europe, all from the wealthy aristocratic families who needed money post-war. He collected things. Just anything. Useless things. Fancy things. Expensive things. He just liked things. Liked spending money on things. He was done with the old Hearst, ready to reinvent himself. And the best place to do that was Hollywood. Hearst decided it was time to leave old New York and go back out west. He decided to build a new house for him and Davies. Not really a house, more like a castle, inconveniently placed right off the California coast. Once it was built, he filled the backyard with imported random animals from all over the globe.
It was
Hearst's affair was an open secret in Hollywood. It was just kind of accepted and waved off.
Really cool.
But back east, barely anyone knew his infidelity. There was an unspoken rule by the newspaper owners. You could cover the personal lives of anybody, except for other news magnates. Nobody wanted their own secrets exposed.
Oh, it's also important to say that, like anyone else who was in the newspaper business, it was seen as proper protocol to say positive things about them and leave out anything negative whatsoever. So it was basically like propaganda, just kind of like boosting everybody up. So they would have like opinion pieces of one another and the other competitive newspapers that would say, we like our newspaper more, but like the person who's running this one is great. And they would only say it about like their peers that they wanted to work with.
But a new kind of journalism was
and if you didn't
up.
follow the rules,
One exempt from this rule.
You wouldn't last super long.
The tabloid took sensationalism to a more severe level. Just gossip and rumors. And they weren't afraid to expose Will's relationship with Davies. Hearst wasn't personally ashamed by this, but it did start to have an effect on Davies' reputation. It was clear she was only in these movies because of Hearst. The tabloids kept at Hearst. In 1924, Thomas Ince, a big player in Hollywood, was reported dead right after he attended a party on Hearst's yacht. Rumors began to spread that Hearst killed him. Supposedly, Hearst found him with Davies, or even more bizarrely, Hearst was certain Davies was cheating on him with Charlie Chaplin and tried to shoot Chaplin, but missed and hit Tom instead. It was all still a rumor though.
Okay,
Officially, Ince died of heart failure. And yeah, Davies was certainly having affairs, but Hearst probably knew about them. He had bigger problems
They
than
were
a
open.
murder rumor. Those tabloids were winning. Even though the 20s were roaring, the Hearst empire wasn't. Davies' film career hit a slump. She had become an alcoholic, embarrassing herself and him at Hollywood dinner parties. But hey, things will turn up at least, right? Then the Great Depression hit. Yeah, a depression that Hearst and his financial genius predicted would only be a little hiccup. It wouldn't affect him at all. Even still, he didn't want to cause a panic, and told his papers to avoid mentioning the downturn as much as possible. Turns out the depression was kind of hard to ignore in the 30s. With less advertisers willing to spend on his papers, Hearst's empire began to collapse. He was approaching bankruptcy, but soon a certain politician was giving.
It's also important to note that most newspapers were struggling at least a little bit during this time period, and that is because one, the government started making their own pieces that they would start distributing to people, and that's like a whole different conversation. And people also started like consuming news in lots of other ways. It was more like people would go to like picture theaters and see like black and white, basically like just like a PowerPoint presentation of the different news and stuff like that. Geez, Josie, you need a special hat for when you're learning. When you're learning, when I'm teaching you guys.
First, a lot to talk about. Ironically,
When
even though
we
he
are
hated
learning
Teddy, Will was getting
communism
pretty
style.
friendly with the rising star FDR. Hearst was fond of FDR's New
jokes.
Deal proposals and made sure to back him in all of his papers. When FDR was elected president, Hearst was convinced that he'd get some degree of input on the president's decisions for all his support. On the business side of things, this New Deal wasn't the only thing helping out Hearst. His primary demographic were those that benefited from the
They're
programs,
called newsreels.
the most likely to read Hearst's glowing praise of the president. Hearst's popularity increased in tandem, until it didn't. You see, FDR did something
We can all
that
put
Hearst
on our
wasn't a
thinking
fan
caps when we
of.
watch
FDR
these.
supported the unions,
Yeah.
and so did Hearst, at a certain
Yep,
point.
yep, similar.
FDR, though, supported the idea of journalist unions. These were his papers, his pawns. How could FDR do this? Hearst considered this a betrayal, after all he had done to talk up FDR. So Hearst pulled a 180, started ripping on FDR, and that stupid New
it's like
Deal of
Elon
his.
Musk.
A little bit of a miscalculation. Those readers still liked FDR, way more than they ever would like Hearst.
Literally
Sales
just like
plummeted.
Elon
to
Musk
Hearst,
and Trump.
FDR, and now his audience.
Same story, different verse, a little bit louder, a little bit worse. Anyways,
We're all betraying him.
That's-
He had
this is why I
spent his
wanted to
life
watch about
fighting
him,
for
by
their
the way.
benefit.
Like, this
and now
whole-
in his hour
whole
of need,
thing.
the everyman
Oh, I
turned their
forgot
back on
subtitles.
him. There had to be something sinister afoot, a threat undermining him and society as a whole. Of course, it was so obvious. The communists. Hearst was
Bruh.
hiring investigators to go after college professors to see who was communist. He went to Europe and had some meetings with, and those people had articles for his papers.
Yep.
His readers weren't all that happy with the change. There were
Yep.
already other alternatives.
You're just so
though his
happy.
decline
Yeah,
continued.
this is like
By the
my-
end of the
this is my
30s,
bread and butter,
he owed
baby.
a lot of money to the banks. The
I grew up
modern
hearing about
equivalent
this,
of
all the time.
$1.7 billion.
All the time.
For the first time in his life, he had to start selling things to get by. The collections he had spent decades curating were now being auctioned off
This
to
fucking
department
karma.
stores. He was so strapped for cash, he needed to rely on a loan from Marion just to keep his business afloat. It was at this point he decided, with his empire near ruins, that he should probably get married to her. Small problem, he was still married to Millicent. Millicent was fine with the divorce. She just wanted one concession, the Cosmopolitan magazine. So Hearst had to choose, the woman he loved or one magazine in his vast empire. He picked the magazine. Of course he picked the magazine. Sorry, Davies. She didn't take the news too well, which is understandable, I'd
Fucking
say.
tweaking
Since
out.
they were already in Mexico for the supposed wedding,
icon.
she just ran away, farther into Mexico. Hearst didn't see her for several months, until she showed back up at the castle, completely
This dude's
wasted.
fucking
What a romantic
crazy.
reunion. They stayed together, surprisingly,
there's the pool.
unmarried, and
Yo, you see that shit? This man was crazy. I want to swim in it, though. I want to swim in it so bad. I want to put my foot in it.
Hearst kept the magazine. Things weren't going
Wonder
too
how many
well,
people peed
and they
in
were
that
only
water,
going to get worse.
you know?
A
Every
movie
time I
was
see a
made,
pool, I think
a
of
film
that.
loosely based on
How many people
Hearst's
pissed
life.
in here?
You might have heard of it, Citizen Kane. The movie doesn't explicitly mention Hearst, but it's very
They need to
clearly
remake
about
this.
Hearst. Just a few details were changed. Kane's mistress was a singer, not an actress. Hearst's childhood was drastically different than Kane's. Understandably, he wasn't a huge fan. Now, it wasn't because it made fun of him or showed him in a negative light.
Used to be
Details like his
accurate.
infidelity and failed political campaigns were all common knowledge. Orson Welles' portrayal of Kane was actually charming, charismatic, and if anything, made Hearst a
waiting
sympathetic
till
figure.
Musk runs
Hearst took
for
issue
something.
with two particular characters in the film, Kane's
Will it be a
mother
meme?
and his mistress. In the movie, Kane's mother is shown as weird, cold, and distant. She just kind of gives him up as a child to the bank, which was the exact opposite of Hearst's actual mother. And his mistress was this talentless singer who
Who's
was
a mama's
only
boy.
popular because of Kane. And by the end of the film, she's broken, penniless, and drunk, which was probably a little too close to reality. Hearst refused to have his papers talk about the film, and kind
the
of
Hearst
threatened
Castle's really
theaters
fun
that
to-
showed it.
to talk
Because of
about,
that,
too.
Citizen Kane ended up being a box office bomb. As World War II approached, Hearst found himself disconnected with the American public. Turns out his European friends were doing some, things. But hey, Japan was doing bad stuff too, so Hearst focused on showing the evils of the Japanese Empire and Japanese Americans. Oof. Either way, Hearst's business empire was slowly being rebuilt. The war revitalized the economy, news was flowing, and even in his old age, Hearst had some money left. So he started going back to his old ways, renovating his castle, getting 73 dash hounds. Alright. It wasn't the same. This
It was
man was
so
in his 80s.
weird.
There just wasn't enough time for substantial renovations or more pointless collecting. Hollywood had moved on. Him and Davies were old news. Hearst was old and sick. San Simeon was built far away from civilization as a grand retreat, but it also meant that it was far away from any hospital, needing constant medical attention. At a certain point, Hearst couldn't even stay in his own home. He had to leave, a broken man. One of the final things he did in his life was to give a controlling share of his company to Davies. Marion wouldn't have much when he died since they were never married. This was his way of saying, hey, thanks for being there, pal. On August 14th, 1951, Hearst died at the age of 88. Marion wasn't even allowed to the funeral, being technically his mistress and all. The revelation that Davies had controlling shares of the company went about as well as
It's
you'd
just so
expect.
funny to
Her
me.
sons were not happy. But
It's so
Marion
good.
wasn't in this for the money. She herself would admit that when she first met Hearst, she was only interested in his money, in power, and ability to make her a star. But over the several decades they had been together, she did genuinely fall in love with him. So she ended up selling the controlling share to Millicent for $1. And then she got remarried the day after to a guy who looked almost identical to Hearst. Yeah, that's weird. This whole story was weird.
Oh man, I really want to watch this particular show, but I'm
Okay,
region
this
locked
is
because
just
of
an
my
ad
country.
reel. Okay, I want you guys to know the Hearst story is just one of my favorite ones. So I just couldn't help but like bring it up. Do we have any questions though? Do we have any questions or concerns about what we just watched? We do have a couple other videos we can watch too, but do you feel like you've learned things today? Do you feel knowledgeable? Nah, but this man was fucking crazy. He was so fucking weird, man. He was so weird. He doesn't even dive into like all of the crazy stuff. But long story short, he wanted to be a politician really bad. And obviously it didn't work out for him. So he kind of started like taking claims for things that he had no part of, kind of like Elon Musk did. Elon Musk was like, I've done all this stuff for like everything, and people could say that he had some influence in it, but he really didn't like cause a lot of stuff to happen. He just kind of like funded people who were doing it, which, yeah, that means you have like minor influence, but you don't actually get to call the shots. And it's very similar. And I think it's very interesting how history tends to have a lot of parallels. Even though the circumstances are very different, the parallels are very much similar. Like, for example, Mr. William Hearst, his parents were actually involved in the mining business. That's how they made all their fucking money. Elon Musk's parents were coincidentally also involved in like the mining business and shit like that. And that's how they made a fuck ton of money. And I'm surprised that more people haven't talked about the similarities between Hearst and Elon Musk. Elon Musk had a ton of children and stuff like that and had a lot of like women that he slept with or whatever. Hearst has a similar story of like sleeping around with women, but he wasn't as into like having like spreading his seed and like passing down the generations. Elon Musk is really weird about that. Yeah. But anyways, it's just really goofy. George says it just shows that the filthy rich are weirdos. Yeah. I think one could say that like being really rich can fuck you over a lot, but he was just very much like he didn't learn how to do a lot of things on his own, and he was a hedonist. Like he just really wanted shit, and if he couldn't get it, he'd like throw a fucking hissy fit, and he'd be like, "What? Give me the thing! Give me the thing! Give me the thing!" But next, we have a video about public broadcasting, which I think is like pretty fucking important. Sorry, I could go on about like Hearst and everything like that. I help teach about it sometimes because it is adjacent to like some of the work that I do, or it's basically what I grew up in. So whenever I can bring it up, I'm just like, learn about this crazy man. Yeah, my for context, I'm not gonna dive really deep into it, but my grandfather really romanticized Hearst because of Hearst was like the media empire, how he collaborated with so many people and did all that shit. And I would just sit there and I'd be like, but Hearst was like a Nazi, and then my grandfather was like, but it's not like a, yeah, it's just he was like, it was just a symbol of the time, and I was like, okay. But anyways, we do have some more stuff. What is it with like really rich, like, it's just the parallels, man. I can't get over it. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but the parallels were definitely there. Oh, this is good. I'm gonna have to go here. It's not as long as the other ones. It's only like 8.5 minutes long. Boop. Boop. It's by PBS. And obviously, we support PBS here. Because PBS is great. And I'm kind of upset with like how they're being treated as of late. So I have to include them. Because they do give a really good breakdown of like public media and everything. Because you remember how he was talking
President
about like,
Trump today voiced his support for defunding America's public broadcasters.
I don't remember exactly.
It comes a day before the heads of PBS and NPR testify in front of the House Subcommittee on Delivering Government Efficiency, or DOGE. The hearing will examine alleged bias in public media, with calls for federal funding cuts growing louder. That funding, in part, helps support the work of PBS News. We wanted to take a moment to explain exactly how public media is funded and, more broadly, how we got to this point. William Brangham is back with that.
Help me God. So help me God. Congratulations.
In the weeks since President Trump took office, his allies have repeatedly taken aim at the nation's public broadcasters, accusing them of liberal bias.
Pushing leftism,
liberal indoctrination,
propaganda from the left, and that's why we need.
Elon Musk has also called for defunding PBS and NPR. Now, allegations of bias and threats to public media are about as old as the industry itself, so it's important to understand the history.
Remington electric shaver.
For a lot of the 1900s, broadcasting in the U.S. was dominated by commercial networks. They sold on-air ads and used that revenue to pay for programming, but some wanted an alternative. So in the 1960s, the Carnegie Corporation launched a study of non-commercial TV in the U.S. and how to bring it to more Americans.
A system that, in their view, could focus more on educational programming, making sure that all members of society have access to broadcast media, going places where there simply were not incentives for a commercial media system.
A key recommendation of the Carnegie Report was for the federal government to provide funds to help operate stations across the country. In 1967, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Public Broadcasting Act, which did just that.
Today, we rededicate a part of the airwaves which belong to all the people.
The law led to the creation of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB. It's a nonprofit composed of Republicans and Democrats that's responsible for distributing federal dollars out to local stations.
The vision of public broadcasting was that it was a decentralized network of local stations, and local stations themselves should really be at the heart of what public media was.
Almost instantly, public broadcasting began featuring a kind of television no one in the U.S. had seen before.
Oh, hi, Gordon. How are you?
Children's programming like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
It's a beautiful day for a neighbor, would you be mine?
Arts and culture shows like The French Chef with Julia Child.
And this is going to be an all-purpose batter.
And Masterpiece Theater.
By 5 modern English novelists.
As well as news.
Good evening from Washington.
In 1973, Robert McNeil teamed up with Jim Lehrer for gavel-to-gavel coverage of the Watergate hearings. That broadcast eventually became the McNeil-Lehrer Report, and later the PBS NewsHour.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Nawaz. On the news.
But there was always something missing, a permanent funding mechanism. The original Carnegie Report had suggested a tax on TV sales to make sure the money wasn't ensnared in the yearly appropriations battle, but that didn't make it into the 1967 law.
When the Public Broadcasting Act passed with no real plan in place to politically insulate public media, it set the stage for, I think, 6 decades now of threats to public media funding, often for political reasons.
So public broadcasting had to regularly fight for its funding. In 1969, one of its biggest stars testified on Capitol Hill.
I feel that if we in public television can only make it clear that feelings are mentionable and manageable, we will have done a great service.
I think it's wonderful. Looks like you just earned the $20 million.
But the fight never stopped.
In the 1990s, what we see are social conservatives who have anxiety about the political direction of some public television programming, joining forces with economic conservatives who think that the transformations in the media landscape that had taken place from 1967 to the present no longer required federal support.
I also do want to mention that this actually started in the Reagan era in like the 80s, because people wanted to defund a lot of, like, not necessarily defund, but they wanted to privatize a lot of media outlets for lots of reasons. And we'll dive into that in just like a couple
Mix
minutes.
of an economic rationale with a cultural rationale to try to dismantle federal support for public media continues throughout the successive decades.
Every Republican administration except Gerald Ford's has tried to cut public media funding. Here's what then presidential candidate Mitt Romney said in a 2012 debate moderated by Jim Lehrer.
I'm sorry, Jim, I'm going to stop the subsidy to PBS. I'm going to stop other things. I like PBS. I love Big Bird. I actually like you, too. But I'm not.
In his first term, President Trump proposed defunding public media. This year, Republicans have introduced multiple bills to do the same.
Government doesn't need to subsidize the media anymore because the world's changed. But I still probably wouldn't object that much if the reporting by these entities was fair and was balanced, but it is not.
We should note here, independent analyses have found both PBS and NPR to be among the most objective and reliable news sources in America. But back to the question of funding. For 2025, Congress appropriated $535 million to CPB. That's less than 1/100% out of the total federal budget. It costs, on average, per American, a little over $1.50 a year. Most of those funds are distributed to some 1,500 local stations nationwide, which produce shows themselves and pay NPR and PBS for the rights to air national shows. But federal funding makes up just a fraction of public media's budgets. The average public radio station gets about 8% of its revenue from the CPB appropriation. For TV stations, it's roughly 17%. So to make up the difference, the system relies heavily on donations, grants, and sponsorships.
The U.S. is almost literally off the chart for how little we allocate towards our public media. At the federal level, it comes out to a little over $1.50 per person per year. Compare that to the Brits, who spend roughly $100 per person per year for the BBC. Northern European countries spend well over $100 per person per year. And it really shows.
I also want to point out how the BBC is seen as one of the most reputable news sources throughout the entire world. The BBC is massive. And most people here in America don't even understand that it is a state-run media source in Britain. They think that it's basically just run by a private corporation. When you have a state-run media source, it forces people, or at least it forces a certain standard. So there's less incentive to hide certain information or twist certain narratives a certain way. So earlier this year, I'm not going to dive insanely into it, but there have been instances recently, specifically at the Wall Street Journal, places like the Lincoln Journal-Star in my hometown in Lincoln, Nebraska, where they will actively leave out certain narratives and try to silence people on certain columns and stuff like that to prevent people from saying a certain thing. So not having an op-ed or an oppositional editorial piece about anyone who's in the high ranks of society that's friends with one of the C-levels. So Bezos or I don't know, their family or whatever. They'll just be oh, or Zuckerberg, or someone who could be affiliated with their company that they want to be friendly with because they're in charge of another company, media source like Facebook or whatever. A state-run media source would be forced to treat everything fairly. It literally just would be. And that's why they tend to be more popular in most countries, because
in the
and we'll
health
dive
of
into
their
the other
public
side of that,
broadcasting
too,
systems,
in a minute.
they tend to view those systems as essential democratic infrastructure. And indeed, data show that there is a positive correlation between the health of a public broadcasting system and the health of a democratic governance.
Now on Frontline. Federal funding today helps pay for everything from investigative documentaries on Frontline to full-length live concerts. It funds historical dramas and Ken Burns' historical films
that bring our history to life.
Public broadcasting also provides emergency broadcasting services.
This is really important.
The last source of news and information during moments of natural disaster. It's committed to this kind of universal service mission that, again, a commercial media system is very unlikely to adhere to.
And that mission reaches 99% of the country, with public media stations broadcasting everywhere from South Florida to northern Alaska. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
It's just really important to understand. I know you guys are probably oh, well, Trump doesn't like it. Trump feels this way, blah, 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 blah. Which, like, you can feel that way if you want to. But it's really important to understand that, like, it sets a different standard for media if you have to abide by certain government regulations. Now, governments can inherently be corrupt. Like, you have seen, I don't know if you guys, like I said, I grew up in media. This is something that I'm just, like, born and raised in, right? Not, like, on a huge, insanely massive scale where I'd be, like, a millionaire or billionaire. But, yeah, whatever. I think it's important to mention that, like, governments can take advantage of media sources and take them over and do propaganda pieces. But if the government can't do that, they'll look towards privatized media and kind of, like, taking their money and trying to invest it to sweeten the pot a little bit, for lack of better words. Let's see. So, like, like, media independence, we've talked about that before. We've seen, like, maps. I think I have, like, some links of it that I can show later. But basically, like, places like El Salvador is basically, like, being cruel towards journalists in that area. So they're making it so that it's harder for them to practice. If they try to tell, like, accurate findings about what's going on in the country, then they will get in trouble. They could be persecuted by their governance or even, like, gangs and stuff, because the person in charge of the government, there's, like, a whole controversial thing, but long story short, he has paid gangs and collaborated with gangs in the past to kind of help his political motives, and that's just a whole different conversation. And that's why there's a lot of fear for journalists there. It's not that they're not wanting to do work, it's just that they can just get fucking screwed over easily. America isn't to that point yet where, like, journalists have to actively worry about their safety in that way. I mean, maybe, like, the CIA or whatever, just, like, taking you out if you try to be a whistleblower, but, like, the everyday journalist is a lot safer, just so y'all know. But then we have another video about, like, conservatives and stuff. IMO, I think media can be very controversial. And there are, like, pros and cons to having state media, but it's better for, like, news, and other information, like having, because PBS, I send links in my, my news channel and Discord for PBS's live streams, regarding, like, public events. Like, C-SPAN is also, like, a public, you know, like a government-ran organization that distributes media to people. Which is really old, too. Like, this stuff is really important. I'm having Luigi's Italian Ice. It's lemon. It's really good. I'm taking a break for the ad break, which is almost over. But yeah. We have another video, which is basically the MAGA perspective, which some people can get mad about, some people can be happier about, some people are, like, super pro MAGA and just like, oh, media is, like, bad and it's all, like, owned by all these people or whatever, which I've talked about in the past. I've talked about, like, how the church I grew up in, the media that, like, we had to produce for people, which kind of fucking sucks, but I don't know. But, like, a lot of the media was propaganda pieces, and I understand how to see those, like, propaganda pieces and stuff. I just checked, Mexico has had 15 journalists murdered the last year. Yeah. El Salvador is a bit different, but arguably, it's safer than being, like, in fucking Gaza or Palestine. They've had their, Israel controls our internet and stuff. And they've been like turning it off randomly so people can't access the internet. They can't, like, journalists are being killed constantly. People aren't allowed to go there and stuff. There's plenty of places that, like, the United States government has a lot of influence over that journalists are, like, really, really struggling. But people only care when it's, like, stateside journalists, you know? They only care, but whatever. It's not something that's, like, inherently, gonna stop anytime soon, which is sad. But yeah, this is a really conservative channel. And I kind of wanted to play it as like a critique piece. I don't endorse it in any way, shape, or form. I don't really like his content. I've watched some of it so I can get an understanding of like how people are perceiving things from the MAGA side of stuff. But I do not endorse like any of this, just so you know. This is not my opinion. And I'm going to try my best to not like rage and just kind of like point stuff out as it comes. But, this one might make me a bit heated. It's called Operation Mockingbird. The CIA lied to you this whole time. It's by Forgotten History, which he is a very like MAGA adjacent, like, like, he's interesting. He is interesting, and I'm trying to be nice about it. He's so, like, let me turn it down just a little bit.
Television news in the U.S. first began to take shape in the late 1940s, shortly after World War II. And back then, the news felt sacred. Every evening, Americans tuned into the same voices, men like Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, and Dan Rather, trusted faces who spoke with calm authority. They weren't just reporters, they were the nation's conscience. And when Cronkite said something, people believed it. But what if even that trust was manufactured? What if, behind those polished desks and deep voices, someone else was pulling the strings? Because as we now know, CBS, Time Magazine, and a dozen other outlets were quietly working with the CIA. And it wasn't to keep you safe, it was to shape what you believed. And here's the part no one wants to admit, it didn't stop, it just went digital. Today, the lines between the media and intelligence are more blurred than ever, and it all started with a little-known program called Operation Mockingbird. So if the CIA could control the media during the Cold War, what makes you think they ever gave it up? And when every major outlet pushes the same narrative, is that journalism or something else entirely?
But
Let's try and find out.
I think that's like a wild assumption too. Just because every media outlet is saying like a certain perspective on like a certain piece or reporting on something a certain way doesn't mean it's all a lie. Like, the stuff that he insinuates in this video to try to like back up what he's saying drives me insane. It's so good though. It's so fun to watch this.
I'm Mike Joberg, Marine Corps veteran and filmmaker, and we will try to answer these questions on today's episode of Forgotten History.
Like how he has like the old TV screen behind him, old monitors. It's so wild to me.
In the wake of World War II, the United States had two things: power and paranoia. The Soviet Union was no longer an ally, it was the enemy. And in Washington, a new kind of warfare was being born: information warfare. Enter the CIA. Formed in 1947 under the National Security Act, the Central Intelligence Agency wasn't just created to gather intelligence. It was built to shape it. Inside this new agency, a man named Frank Wisner was given a blank check to run covert psychological operations. His mission? Make sure the world heard America's version of the truth and silence anything else. Wisner referred to it as his mighty Wurlitzer, a metaphor for a massive instrument that, once played, could make any country dance to America's tune. And how would he play it? Not with tanks or troops, but with journalists. This wasn't a rogue plot. It was the official U.S. policy, signed off at the highest levels. By the
Operation
early 1950s,
Mockingbird is like actually
Operation
real, by the
Mockingbird
way.
was fully operational. Funded through black budgets and hidden accounts, at its peak, the CIA had relationships with over 400 journalists across the globe. And not just reporters, but editors, publishers, broadcasters, and media executives. Some were recruited through back channels. Others didn't even realize who they were working for. And one of their first targets, the Associated Press. Soon the operation expanded to include CBS, Time, Life magazine, Reuters, and even foreign outlets. They weren't reporting the truth. They were reporting what the CIA wanted the world to believe. And the most disturbing part, almost no one questioned it. Many were paid under the table, some in cash, others through lucrative book deals, speaking gigs, or consulting work. And in some cases, the CIA didn't just influence the story, they wrote it themselves. A journalist would receive a pre-written script, already framed with the right political spin. All they had to do was slap their name on it and publish it. And it wasn't just news. Films, magazines, and even academic journals were shaped by...
I also want to mention that Operation Mockingbird did not always operate in that formatting, just so you guys know. It wasn't like they got a pre-written thing that they all had to write their names on and stuff like that. He's presenting it like that, but that's not necessarily it. It was a lot of subtle influences and them saying hey, if you want X, you have to keep doing this, and getting people in high positions to collaborate with the CIA to make sure that things were appearing a certain way. It was just kind of having people, well, not just having people within, but kind of what he was saying, but not in the exact way that he was saying it. Just so you
the
guys
CIA
know.
talking points. If it could sway public opinion, it was in play. The agency also created entire front organizations, phony press agencies that looked legit but existed solely to pump out U.S. propaganda overseas. And if a journalist refused to play ball, they'd be discredited, blackballed, or quietly replaced. The idea wasn't to control all the media, just enough to guide the narrative domestically and abroad. And it worked. From the Korean War to the Cuban Missile Crisis, from Latin America coups to the jungles of Vietnam. Mockingbird wasn't just a covert program, it was an information war, waged on the American people. During Korea, CIA front groups like Radio Free Press Asia flooded the airwaves with horror stories of communist atrocities, many unverified, only to have some of those same stories echoed in Life magazine and CBS broadcasts. In Latin America, the CIA orchestrated coups in Guatemala in 1954 and in Chile in 1973. Major outlets like the New York Times and Time magazine ran editorials framing democratically elected leaders as communist threats. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, selective leaks and scripted fear pieces helped build the narrative of Kennedy's moral high ground while ignoring America's own secret missile deployments in Turkey. And in Vietnam, embedded correspondents often repeated military talking points provided by CIA liaisons, selling the war as winnable.
Okay, you heard what he said, right? CIA liaisons. It's not necessarily that they were being told exactly what to write down. You have to write it this way, otherwise you're going to get in trouble or whatever. It's they use the government as their source of information, and that could inherently be faulty. It's not like nowadays where everybody has access to the media and you can just look on your phone, go to media from a certain location and see how things are. It's how Gaza is the first televised genocide that we've ever really had, at this fucking scale. That's something that no matter what media outlets in the United States say or whatever, everyone can look and see the people who are living there, look at the stuff that they're streaming, look at their content and everything, and be this is clearly not fucking true. Which is why Israel isn't getting away with it to the same way that they would have or that they did years and years ago, because this isn't their first time doing this shit either. So it's just, yeah.
After it had become a political quagmire. For more than 2 decades, Operation Mockingbird operated in the shadows, completely unknown to the public, until cracks started to form.
I want to
early
like frame it
1970s,
properly.
the Vietnam War had collapsed into chaos. Watergate was unraveling the presidency, and Americans were finally asking questions they should have asked years earlier. That pressure led to the creation of the Church Committee in 1975, a Senate investigation led by Democratic Senator Frank Church, tasked with uncovering abuses by the intelligence community. What they found was worse than expected. From illegal surveillance to assassination plots, the CIA was exposed as operating well beyond its charter. They had called them conspiracy theorists until the documents proved they were right. And one of the most disturbing revelations, the CIA had infiltrated the media. Senator Church confirmed that the CIA had secretly placed journalists inside nearly every major news organization, using them to influence domestic and international reporting. The public was shocked, and the CIA promised it would never happen again. And just like that, it was buried. The media moved on. No one was held accountable, and Americans were told to go back to sleep. But there was a problem. No law was passed to stop the CIA from influencing the media. No executive order, no internal purge.
This is true,
Just a
by
quiet
the way.
promise from an agency built on secrecy. In other words, Mockingbird wasn't shut down. It was renamed, rebranded, modernized. Because by the 1980s and 90s, the CIA didn't need to slip envelopes to journalists anymore. They had built relationships inside corporate newsrooms. They had former agents working as consultants for major networks.
This is what I was talking about earlier, like the subtleties of it. Now, I also think it's very important to understand that media as we know it, if you want to have access, like literally we could talk about this with the press briefing that happened earlier today with the State Department. So there was a woman, I think her name was Miss Nadia. She was a journalist. I can't remember what country she's from exactly, but she was talking to the person conducting everything. I can't remember her fucking name because I don't respect her at all. I really fucking suck with that. I'm sorry. But the lady who's in charge of the press briefing, she was being asked questions by Miss Nadia specifically about like what's going on in Gaza. Miss Nadia said something along the lines of like, she said, isn't America responsible for what's happening in Gaza right now? Because without America funding what's going on, then everything would be like, nothing would be happening. Like they wouldn't be able to get away with what they're doing. So doesn't Trump have more say in what's going on than she does? And then the person in charge of the press briefing, by the way, like that fucking crazy lady, she actually threatened access to Miss Nadia in a very subtle way, which I don't think a lot of people picked up on, or maybe some people did. But long story short, she was like, oh, well, you have had direct access with the president or whatever. And she was painting it to be a privilege. And she was like, this is something that you have access to. This is something that you have done in the past. And you're very lucky to be in that position where you've been able to speak with the president. Like she was insinuating that it's very privileged to do that. And if she kept talking about it, she might get like, it's very subtle. But if you've never been in a situation with like journalism and media, that was like a subtle, like if you keep this shit up, you're not going to be able to do it anymore. Like you're lucky to even be in that position. If you keep bringing this up, you're not even going to have that access anymore. And yeah, which is in and of itself like another thing. There's been plenty of press briefings with with the White House and stuff like that, where they fucking say like, oh, well, it's a privilege to be here, and if you don't follow the rules, you're not going to be allowed to be in the White House, and you're not going to be allowed to have access to this information anymore. And as a news outlet, if you don't have access to information or those spaces, you're going to have a lot harder of a time being ahead of the curve and gaining that reputable nature that is necessary in the field. So You either have to like play the game, say things in a semi-favorable tone to what the current administration is doing, or you have to like compromise your access to spaces, which a lot of media outlets are not willing to do. And it will be used as like a threat against them too. Like if you don't write XYZ in a certain way, you're not going to have access to this anymore.
And more importantly,
happens a lot more
the
than you
media
think.
had become centralized. Fewer companies own more outlets, less oversight, fewer choices. By the time the 2000s
journalism
arrived,
and media
Mockingbird didn't need to call
super
a newsroom.
important, by the way.
They could just let the narrative trickle down from the top. And in the age of social media, everything got faster. Leaks, talking points, anonymous sources, they all became tools in a war for control of the public mind. Today, the same intelligence figures who once operated in the shadows are now on TV, telling you what to think. John Brennan, James Clapper, Michael Hayden, all former CIA or NSA, now rebranded as expert commentators. The old tactics were already back. Iraq was sold on lies, yellow cake uranium, aluminum tubes, mobile weapon labs, pushed by anonymous sources and plastered across every major network. Afghanistan was framed as a righteous war on terror, even as it became a 20-year money pit fueled by contractors and false progress reports. And in Ukraine, dissent is once again taboo. The press doesn't ask if we're escalating a proxy war. They ask why you're not on board. Different decade, same script. The CIA didn't need to restart Mockingbird. It just needed a new reason for you to look away. They don't hide it anymore because the public stopped asking hard questions.
Not even
that. Until 2016.
It's just the standard
That's
for
when
most
someone
media.
came along who didn't trust the press, who didn't.
This is the standard for privatized media that I was talking about before. If you make it so that like journalists don't have a right to be involved in certain spaces, like they don't have protections in government situations, especially in the States, which they do have some protections, but it is extremely limited. And there is no like right for them to be invited to certain spaces to learn certain things, especially with the government. So it's really weird. It's really weird.
Play by the rules.
And where he goes with this is weird.
Quietly become
because he starts going into Trump.
When Donald Trump ran for president in 2016, he wasn't just fighting Democrats. He was fighting something older, something deeper. He wasn't a politician. He didn't owe favors to the media. He didn't respect their rules. And worst of all, he
didn't hold favors to the media? Lies. There's so many like behind the scenes photos of him being like, oh, don't air that, otherwise I'm never going to talk to you again. Or don't do this, otherwise I'm never going to talk to you again. Like, he manipulates the media to get what he wants. So for him to go to Trump, like, Trump says he doesn't do this, but if you actually look at all the behind the scenes that you can see for shit, you can tell that he does
fake
do
news,
that.
Corrupt press, enemy of the people. It was a declaration of war against a system that had gone unchecked for decades. And suddenly, the tactics of Operation Mockingbird came roaring back to life. Anonymous sources flooded.
If Trump doesn't fucking trust the media, why does he promote certain media sources that have had like so much fucking controversy or whatever? Why does he like constantly pit media sources against one another when they seemingly have had not a ton of like issues in the past, where they've had more of like respectful relationships? Like, at the end of the day, most journalists are not they're not competing with just one another, or they're not competing company versus company. They're competing with like one another. They're competing to keep their position because there's not a lot of unions protecting journalists either. And that's a whole other conversation. But like, journalists are seen as disposable, and they kind of like, they're all pretty much like friendly or friends with one another to a certain extent.
The headlines, stories based on leaked intelligence, dominated the news cycle.
Like a lot of politicians who are on
Former
like different
CIA
sides and they're still friendly
like
with one another.
And Michael Hayden went from silent operatives to loud political pundits, painting Trump as a threat to democracy.
Because he is.
The sitting president was accused.
That doesn't mean that, like... See, this is, like, my frustration. He's just taking random, like... I wanted to show this because I want to show, like, where people are going with this when it's not necessarily true. Just because there's multiple people that used to work for the CIA that are saying something is bad doesn't mean that they're trying to, like, be in the government's interest or whatever for as an idea of like, oh, fuck Trump or whatever. Maybe they want the government to stay the way that it was because that's what benefited them, not necessarily because they absolutely hate Trump or whatever. They know that he's a threat to the government as it stands today, and that's what their job is trying to protect. But just because someone is a threat to like a government doesn't mean that it's gonna, they have like some positive arc and they're like a hero or whatever. Sometimes the threats are like actual fucking threats. And when you have an organization that in its past has done lots of fucked up things to people over and over and over again, the public doesn't trust them. So even having these people come out and say shit doesn't really look as good as they want it to. That's a whole other thing.
Of being a Russian asset, on the word of unnamed sources from the same agencies that once ran Mockingbird. Major tech platforms began flagging, suppressing, and outright banning dissenting voices.
It's because they're lying. It's either hate speech or lying. This was made like a couple days ago, by the way. I wanted to get something that was fairly recent. But people are getting banned because they fucking have hate speech or they were lying about things.
It challenged the intelligence community's version of events were labeled misinformation. The same journalists who once asked tough questions stopped asking altogether.
But they
the
are,
old operation
though.
was back. This time, dressed in hashtags and digital fact checkers. Whether you liked Trump or not, it didn't matter. What mattered was what you weren't allowed to say. You weren't allowed to question who suddenly had the power to silence you. The CIA didn't need to rewrite the playbook.
Trump literally does not support any organization media-wise that doesn't fucking
was about
eat
keeping
his
you in
ass.
line.
Like, come
The
on.
most dangerous part? It worked. For decades, people trusted the headlines. They trusted the anchors. They trusted the government to tell you the truth. Today, the same agencies that ran Mockingbird now shape the online world you live in. They don't need to burn books. They just bury stories. So ask yourself, if the press is free, why do they all say the same thing? If the truth is dangerous, who's deciding what you're allowed to hear? So the real question is...
See, the thing is he's not giving you a lot of information to go off of. When he's saying, like, the press is all saying the same thing, he's not giving you examples of the press saying the same thing over and over again. He's asking you to just draw random conclusions so he doesn't have to do the dirty work for you. This is lazy fucking content. It is lazy as shit. Sorry for being, like, really fucking blunt about it, but he's being lazy.
The media is lying to you. It's how long...
But he doesn't say how it's lying to you.
Let us know your thoughts on Operation Mockingbird in the comments below.
It's a fear piece. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I wanted to talk about this because it just pisses me off. And clearly, like, I have my feelings. I have my feelings, but they're not good. Anyways, it's just like, why? Like, why not give any sources? Like, why just say, oh, all of them are saying the same thing? What's the same thing that's wrong? What is the same thing that's wrong? Like, you're critiquing journalism as a whole, but you're not willing to say, like, what the journalism is doing that's inherently wrong. Look at her! Oh my god, I'm gonna keep talking so I don't, like, bother her or disturb her, but I want her to go in there so bad. Oh my god, I wonder if she'll fit. This is really cute. Oh, fuck! She almost went in there. Damn it. Okay, anyways. But, yeah. See, he was critiquing a lot of other, like, outlets and stuff like that for issues. But yeah, lose this guy's channel. He's not worth it. I know. But it's like, this is the argument. I'm not, like, I don't enjoy his channel. I don't think it's good information. But I want people to understand that, like, how people are using the history and the past of things to portray and talk about how media currently is. This is currently a big MAGA argument, saying, like, this is the rhetoric that people are using. And that is why this man almost has like 1 million fucking followers on YouTube. He is popular because a lot of people agree with him. And they'll just listen to what he says. And be like, yeah, that's right. Instead of being like, why aren't you showing sources? Why aren't you showing this? Why aren't you showing that? People will take little glimmers of truth in something, like Mockingbird and stuff, but they'll make a ton of connections without accepting the fact that they could have flaws in their rhetoric or their theories. And that's not healthy. Like, I don't sit here and be like, oh, I know everything all the time. I fact check shit constantly. Even while, like, I'm talking in videos, like, I have link after link after link after link. Yeah, what, 1 million for this guy? Yeah. No, this is the MAGA rhetoric. Like, most people that I know that are, like, MAGA heads, I ask them to, like, show me content, which maybe one day we can have, like, a MAGA react stream where I talk about, like, all of the content that, like, fucking these, like, red-pilled fucking dudes, like, give me. And women, too. This is the content that they give me. They're just like, yeah, but it sounds true. And I'm like, but there is no, like, he's using a historical event as a way to appeal towards your emotions and mistrust, because he's trying to sow seeds of doubt. And then he doesn't have to, like, in order for it to be successful and for it to be, like, really good and keep people watching and stuff and have them come back, is to have someone draw their own conclusions rather than you doing it for them. Because one, that means they're thinking about the piece that you're giving them. And then two, it's forcing them to connect with it more because they're adding their own personal input to the content that you are creating. It is why, like, in speeches and stuff, people would be like, oh, can you give me your input? Like, what do you know about this? Like, what have you guys seen about this in your past? Or calling people to raise their hands and, like, give you whatever. It's because if you can get invested in the topic, add your own parts to things, then you're going to remember it better and you're going to think of it more positively, even if you don't agree with the information that's being said. That's how, like, the alt-right pipeline and most pipelines online work. If you get any form of attention, like, whether that be on a stream, whether that be on a broadcast, whether that be, like, on fucking Twitter or something like that, even if it's not positive attention, you'll be more inclined to keep showing up because at least someone's listening to your opinion. That's why all those successful streamers, like, fucking react to people's chats when their chats are fucking shitty and they're just like, whoa, look at this dude or whatever. And the chatter fucking comes back. Like, they'll make new accounts and come back. Because it gives them, like, a validation loop. And sometimes it's just fucking rage bait. It's just, like, a basic thing. It's like the kid in class that's a fucking class clown, you know? Like, or they'll say things to the teacher just to get them riled up, but not because they personally believe in it. It's just because they want the attention. And I get people like that on my stream, too. Or they'll come on and they'll be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, oh, okay, so you're just going to be like this now? All right. I guess that's how it is. But yeah, I'm very, very, very passionate about this. Like, obviously, I listen to, like, press briefings often. I'm getting back into it. Ew. And then I'm sorry. But, like, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It's just, yeah. I'm getting back into the swing of things, okay? And I'm trying to not hate it as much, alright? Don't set high expectations for me. Only learning 4 languages for this shit. I'm kidding. I'm not good at it. I'll be a polyglot, y'all. Woohoo. I've been saying that forever. So far, I've been doing a lot better, though. That's for a different day. Maybe one day I'll be, I'll be on stream and I'll be able to recite lots of different media in their native tongue to you guys, which is really cool. I really want to do that. Like, there's a lot of content creators who do that already, so obviously it wouldn't be like the best. The more you know, baby. The better it is. It's gonna take me years. Ugh. Anyways. I'm filing my nails. I have this conversation. Because I broke my nail. So all of them get to be shorter little nubs. Little nubs. But yeah. I'm kind of just like frustrated with it. Also, with everything that we've been talking about, this is why there's a resurgence in independent media outlets. Why people are going towards like more Twitch streamers like Asmongold or Son Piker or like, you know, basically anybody that has like a fucking camera that talks about their opinions that seem semi-reputable or relatable. And it's because they don't trust media. Like, everyone can see that it's all like a, not necessarily a pay-to-play system, but you basically have to bootlick a little bit in order to get in those spaces. Even content creators like Pearlmania, who are meeting with people like Miss Jasmine Crockett, who she was part of like a lot of stuff in Texas or whatever. I think he just released like a TikTok with her where they were talking about what's going on in Texas with all the representatives and everything and getting their opinion. If you want to have those people with you, you can't overly criticize them. There's a reason why the politicians that I know and stuff like that, I don't have on my stream, and I don't talk to them about stream or try to make any of it a part of it. It's because it's just one, it doesn't seem like a good idea for me unless I'm actively criticizing them or we're allowed to have like that type of conversation. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's why, like, even though I help out with campaigns and even though I do that sort of thing, I don't necessarily promote a lot of it on stream. Maybe, like, really close to the election, and I'll be like, yeah, I've been helping out with this, but I keep it under wraps for the most part. And I've noticed a lot of other, like, streamers doing similar things. I don't know. But it can compromise your relationships with them, and that's okay. Like, I've had campaigns that I've helped out with where if you ask something critical of them, they no longer invite you to things at all. And those are the politicians I don't respect. I'm just like, if you can't take criticism from someone who's promoting your stuff and trying to help you, then why do you have a right to be in office? Like, you should want people like that that can do that. Anyways, George says, hi, Bixby. Yeah, Bixby's been super sweet. I think she might go in the hole. I don't know if she's gonna fit though. She's gone like up here and she lays like up here a bit. She doesn't really go in the hole. I think Siri's gonna really like the basket right there. Once he figures out what it is and that he can lay there, he's gonna really like that shit. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. I don't want it to seem like I know a lot of stuff or like I'm invested in like a ton of stuff or whatever. I'm not like, I don't know. I would just say that like it's easier to get in spaces than you think it is, and you don't have to have like tens of thousands of subscribers on like something to be reputable enough, because the real world doesn't really care about your follower count. Actually, it's easier to get in spaces if you don't have a follower count, because then you can just sit there and observe, and you can actually participate and interact. I'm not saying a follower count is like bad per se, but it does definitely like knock you down on your knees a little bit, because then you have to worry about your image and all that stuff a lot more. So either way, you should care at least a little bit. But yeah, I think that's like not bad, right? These look even. Anyways, I think about this all the time, guys. I have like George says yes. But yeah, Don't be afraid to participate, y'all. You can participate with conservatives and Democrats. I actually highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that. Like, a big reason why I'm left-leaning is because I've had the opportunities and I've taken opportunities to participate in both spaces. Not necessarily like being like huge politically in both spaces. I didn't start participating in campaigns until like late high school, like early college and stuff. But you can be involved in those spaces. You can show up to town halls and meetings. Like, there's an amazing town hall that happened, I think today's the 5th, right? 2 days ago in Lincoln, Nebraska. That was pretty fucking wild. It made national headlines again, because here in Nebraska, we don't fuck around with shit. Like, we're very blunt about stuff, and if you're fucking us over, we're gonna tell you. And if you want to play that, like, oh, you know, like, let's be soft, like, Nebraska doesn't have that Midwestern charm that people think we have. We'll be fucking honest with you, and if you fuck shit up, we'll just be like, you're fucking shit up. Like, if we're mad at you, we're gonna fucking tell you. And we're not people pleasers here, right? We don't have fucking time. We don't care. Like, we got shit to do. We're gonna go, like, drink beer and watch football or some crazy shit. Like, I just, like, no one gives a fuck about you here. And if you don't want to, like, if you can't, like, fit in or whatever, people are gonna be like, yo, honey, you're not, like, this isn't for you. People are really honest here. So, like, you can participate in town halls and stuff like that. You can talk to politicians. Like, I literally worked at a restaurant where I would regularly see politicians that I do not like, and that I would actually talk to them about things. Did they always treat me like a person? No. There's a reason why I'm very against certain politicians, but, like, I mean, I worked, like blocks away from the Capitol, so I saw them, like, every time shit was in session. And it's like, when you are around that stuff, and you can even sit in and watch sessions and stuff, like, you can participate more than you think. And when you get involved, you're just like, oh, this is the game that's being played. It's being played at every fucking level. Like, everything that I've been describing today. It's not as, like, fancy as people make it out to be. But yeah. Anyways, there's, like, lots of things that I just straight up have been like, I don't really want to participate in. Like, I'll help out with campaigns, but I'm not going to be part of your documentary. You know, like, I'm not going to be sitting there and, like, it be your long-term face for your campaign, no matter how much effort I put into it. Like, I'm not going to do, like, I'm not going to be, like, your pawn. I'm here to learn. I don't know. Some people have a different perspective. They just want, like, recognition and shit, and that's a whole different conversation, but yeah. Anyways, that's just me venting. And then me venting. Me being annoying. Okay. Sorry, that's, like, a personal thing, too. Like, I don't want to be a part of that stuff. Go ahead and vent. Well, I'm not really even, I am kind of venting because it makes me mad. It makes me mad. Like, so many people, like, get involved in politics or, like, volunteer and stuff like that for, like, the wrong reasons. Like, they want notoriety. They want to have influence in their community. They want to do all that stuff. Where, like, you're not, people can sense that. Like, I feel like people just fucking know when you're trying to do that. And they can clock that shit. Some people like that, and they're like, yeah, that's what I want, and that's, like, what I think we need or whatever. But for the most part, like, people can see it, and they can see right through you. So, like, stop trying to be sneaky. Like, we see you, you know? I just, I don't know. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And, yeah. But, like, my thing is that it's so easy to get involved in these spaces and to learn about these things, like, even at the local level, that I feel like people legitimately have, like, zero excuse for not having that understanding. And that may be a little bit harsh of me, because I understand some people don't have the time to participate, and I respect that, you know? But, like, the opportunity's there. Like, you can go and get that hands-on experience, whether that be like with a city council member, like helping them out with their campaign, or even like observing, showing up to like these meetings, these town halls, like even watching shit online. Like, if you just give yourself like enough time in those spaces, you're going to start learning things, and not being there to just like find information and be like, that person said this, so therefore it's like fucked up. No, like, or I don't like what they said, and just zeroing in on that. Like, I've done that in the past too, like, especially when I was younger. But, like, it's better to just observe and take it all in, because otherwise you're going to miss important things. Hi, Andrew, are you just ready? Have to go soon. Not really, but, you know, we have another thing we gotta do. George says, I live in a quiet country, not much goes on here. Politics. Maryland has so much stuff going on. What do you mean? You could, like, go on live streams and find a lot of stuff, too. You could just watch the live streams. County, that's true. Yeah. That's fair. Like, your county's probably really quiet, but you can still watch things at the upper level. Like, the access is there. Like, you can find that information at, like, any level. And you have the opportunities for it with the internet. And that's why I'm posting a lot of what I do online, like, especially on Discord and stuff, news-wise, just giving you those resources instead of, like, sitting there and watching, like, you know, coverage about what other people think about stuff. Actually sit there and listen to the entire press briefing and see what you think. Start fact-checking things on your own. Like, that's going to improve your media literacy. And don't treat it like homework, but treat it like step in journalism shoes and pretend to be like a journalist for a bit. And that is like one of the only ways to really refine your media literacy, is to actually be the person that is the filter for yourself instead of just letting everybody else tell you what to think and believe. And George says this is a blue state. But yeah, you can still watch the live streams. They can't, like, in real time doctor the live streams. Or you could have multiple live streams up if you don't trust them, you know? Like, if that's, like, a thing, you know, that you guys struggle with. But yeah. I don't know, not trying to dog on y'all. But tomorrow, I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm really excited for tomorrow's meal. It's going to be fun. I think it'll just be, like, the meal, and then I'll have, like, a random dessert. Which will be fun. But yeah. Anyways. Like, that's like... I'm just trying to, like, chill. I don't have my necklace, so I'm like... Where is it? I don't know. I feel like it might be a little bit better if you guys do that. And I'm not trying to be like a bitch or whatever. Or be like, you guys are blah, 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 blah. Like... It'll be a lot better if you take the time to watch it yourself too. If you have the time. I just play it while I'm doing other things. And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, oh my god, seriously? Because if you watch enough of the press briefings, you'll see where people are actually lying on both sides and how they cover stuff up. You just gotta expose yourself to it. It's exposure therapy, baby. Not really therapy, but, like, you know what I mean. I know, it's time to go, isn't it? Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to be back tomorrow for a cooking stream. Oh, good night, Lefty. Good night, George. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, I will be here a bit earlier tomorrow, too, by the way. I'm going to try. I have some stuff going on in the evening. I have, so I'll have to start pretty early. Probably around, like, 3-ish. Like, 2 hours early. Like, I'm not even joking. So I'll make all the food, and then I'll eat, and then I'll have to go to, do some stuff. But yeah, so I'll just be early. Sorry, guys. I know, but that's how I'm accommodating, because it's going to be really hard. I'm going to start having more things happening in the evenings, and my schedule might have to like slide around a little bit more, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah. Oh my goodness. Anyways, sleep well, stay safe, stay alive, and